Welcome to Coy Reese Photography Training Sessions. In a very short 3 years as a full-time photographer and cinematographer, my work has been published in magazines to billboards. I've served as a director of photography for commercials to feature film. Whether your interest is digital photography or HD video, my goal is to make sure you have creative control over the outcome of the project, one shoot at a time. Let's create some magic. Welcome back to Coy Reese Photography's training session. In episode 1, we went over aperture, how that controls the amount of light that comes into the lens, and also the depth of field. Today, we're going to talk about shutter speed. Let's take a look. Shutter speed is how fast your camera shutter opens and closes. And the quick way to understand the shutter speed is if you look on my camera, my shutter speed is actually listed here at 500 of a second. The higher this number, the faster the shutter speed. The lower this number, the slower the shutter speed. So let's do a quick press down of the shutter to see the rate at which it opens and closes at 1/500 of a second. So as you can see, that's actually opening and closing at a pretty fast rate. And I can actually go beyond 1/500 to go up to 1,000, 2,000 on up. And as that number increases, it's gonna open and close much faster than it just open and close. So now let me take it down to, let's just exaggerate it and go down to 0.3 of a second. And once again, the shutter speed is listed here on my camera, and this roll dial actually increases the shutter speed going up, and this way it's actually going down. So right now I'm at 0.3 of a second, and if I press the shutter button down, you see it's actually opening and closing at a much slower rate. So how does that affect the exposure? The first photo was taken at 1/500 of a second. The fast shutter speed is letting in less light, allowing me to see what looks to me like the tips of 3 candles. At 0.3 of a second, it takes the shutter speed longer to open and close. I'm able to let in more light, allowing me to confirm that it is indeed 3 candles and also a cell phone in the frame. So what else can you do with the shutter speed? Well, you know what? I'm glad you asked. So let's create an example. Put on my lens here, and we're gonna close your eyes and imagine that we have a body of water here. So go ahead and close your eyes, and if you're a visual person and when you open them up, you're gonna have your water, and there it is. So now, what I wanna do first, I wanna take a photo of the water at 1/500 of a second to see if I'm able to stop the action and stop the movement of the water, and let's just see how the photo turns out. So, all right, I'm at 1/500 of a second. I'm gonna take a quick photo. Okay, so now let's take a look at that. So now that I'm looking at this photo, it looks pretty cool. I actually have the water that was frozen in action. It's a couple drops, and I can actually kind of see the texture of the actual water in this photo. So now let's use a slower shutter speed. So I'm gonna roll my dial down to this time, let's just say 2 seconds. And I will let you know that if you're shooting at a shutter speed that low, you're gonna need a tripod, because once again, the shutter is actually staying open longer, and you have to be steady while it's open, because if not, your photo is gonna be blurry. So now that we have the water, I have the camera set, as you can see, to 2 seconds. So now let's take a photo. All right, cool. So now that we've taken the photo, let's take a look at this particular one. And wow, I love the results. And to me, in this case, I guess my preference, I'm really loving the picture at a slower shutter speed, because it just looks more artistic to me. It's blurring out the water. I mean, I have great detail in the branch, and everything just looks cool. So as you can see, the shutter speed not only controls the exposure, but it also can control how moving objects appear in your photo. Keep in mind, most of your shots during daylight will have a shutter speed around 1/25 to 1/60th of a second if you're photographing stationary objects and people. If low light situations cause you to start to drop your shutter below 60th of a second, you might want to consider using a tripod. so that you don't have any unwanted blurry photos. Because blurry photos are only cool if it's on purpose. I hope that gives you a better understanding of shutter speed and see how you can use the shutter to create some different effects. So until next time, if you have any other questions, email me at webshow@CoreyReesePhotography.com. Go out, create, and have fun. Burry Reese here from DSLRphotography.net, and today we talk about fixing your blurry photos. One of the main issues that cause blurry photos is using a slow shutter speed and not holding your camera steady all the way through the shot. To fix that, use a tripod or set your shutter speed equal to the longest distance of your lens. Keeping that in mind, where would I need to set my shutter speed if I use this zoom lens zoomed out to 135? What about this lens? Where would I need to set it? Of course, you can set your shutter speed much higher than the focal length of the lens, but just keep in mind this is just a reference. So if you start going below that, understand the consequences if you do not have a steady hand. So if you have a steady hand, by all means, go for it. But if you don't, just use a tripod if you want to get a steady